Oh God. Oh no. This is not good. This is not good at all. After Iranian ballistic missiles and drone swarms struck targets deep inside Israel, the United States Navy did not wait for a second order. Strike groups operating across the region were elevated to full combat readiness within hours. The directive moved through the chain of command fast. Every commanding officer received the same message at the same time. Every ship, every aircraft, every weapon system, every crew member, the entire naval force shifted to a war footing simultaneously. This was not a drill. This was the United States Navy preparing to fight. Aboard the carrier strike group operating in the Arabian Sea, the transformation was immediate. Sailors who had been resting in their berthing compartments were called to their battle stations. Those already on watch tightened their focus. The ship's announcing system carried the orders to every corner of the vessel, from the engine rooms deep below the waterline to the radar rooms at the top of the island structure. Every sailor knew what the alert meant. On the flight deck, the pace shifted instantly. Aircraft that had been in maintenance cycles were pulled forward by tow tractors. Deck crews in their colored jerseys flooded the flight deck and began working in coordinated teams. Yellow jerseys directing aircraft movement, red jerseys handling weapons and ordnance, green jerseys managing catapult systems and arresting gear, purple jerseys moving fuel trucks into position, blue jerseys operating tow tractors and handling chocks and chains. Every color a different specialty. Every person with a specific job. The flight deck operated like a living machine, each part moving in coordination with every other. No one needed to be told twice. Every sailor on that deck had trained for this moment hundreds of times. When the combat alert came down, the training took over. Below the flight deck, pilots were already assembling in their squadron briefing rooms. Intelligence officers stood at the front with updated threat assessments pulled from satellite feeds and signals intelligence. Iranian missile launch sites were marked on the maps. Radar installations along the Iranian coastline were identified and plotted. Naval assets operating out of Iranian ports in the Persian Gulf were tracked and catalogued. The Strait of Hormuz, carrying nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply, was now a potential battle space. The pilots listened. They studied their assigned target packages, memorized their ingress routes, their egress corridors, their alternates if primary paths became compromised. They identified surface-to-air missile batteries that could threaten their aircraft. Every pilot in that room understood the environment they were flying into. There were no unknowns left on the board by the time the briefing ended. On the flight deck above, weapons teams were already working. Loading carts carrying air-to-air missiles and precision-guided munitions were wheeled into position beneath the wings of F/A-18 Super Hornets lined up across the deck. The weapons teams worked methodically. Speed mattered, but accuracy mattered more. A missile improperly mounted was a missile that would not fly when the trigger was pulled. Air-to-air missiles were lifted onto the wingtip rails and locked into place. Precision-guided bombs were hoisted onto the underwing pylons using hydraulic equipment. Each weapon was connected to the aircraft electronics. Wiring harnesses plugged in. Data links confirmed. Arming pins inserted with bright red flags hanging from them, visible from a distance, a clear indicator to every person on the deck that live ordnance was on that aircraft. Those pins would remain in until the moment the aircraft taxied to the catapult. Fuel trucks moved in constant rotation across the deck. Purple jersey crews connected refueling nozzles to each aircraft and monitored the flow as JP-5 aviation fuel filled the tanks. When the gauges read full, the nozzle was disconnected, the cap sealed, and the truck was already moving to the next aircraft. The rotation did not stop. Aircraft after aircraft fueled without pause. While the carrier prepared its aircraft, the ships of the strike group took their battle positions. Arleigh Burke-class destroyers spread out in a protective formation around the carrier. Each vessel assigned a specific sector of responsibility. These were not simply escort vessels. They were weapons platforms carrying some of the most advanced missile systems ever built, and right now every system aboard them was being brought to full active status. Inside the vertical launch system cells, embedded in the decks of the destroyers, Tomahawk cruise missiles sat in their canisters awaiting targeting coordinates. Standard missiles were loaded and verified for air defense. Each VLS cell was checked individually, each canister inspected, each system confirmed operational. These ships could engage targets in the air, on the surface, and hundreds of miles inland. At this moment, they were prepared to do all three. Inside the combat information centers, operators sat at their consoles in the blue light of multiple screens. Radar feeds displayed every contact within hundreds of miles. Air contacts, surface contacts, subsurface contacts, all tracked simultaneously. Every blip on the screen had to be identified and categorized in real time. Commercial aircraft, military aircraft, drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. The threat board was updated continuously as new information came in from across the region. Officers relayed contact information up the chain of command without delay. Communication circuits between the ships crackled with steady voice traffic. The entire strike group formation was sharing information and operating as a single coordinated unit. On the destroyers, close-in weapon systems were brought to active ready status. The Phalanx CIWS, a radar-guided rotary cannon capable of firing thousands of rounds per minute, was one of the final layers of defense against any incoming missile that penetrated the outer rings of the strike group's air defense network. Sailors ran full diagnostics and confirmed every system was tracking and ready. Nothing was left in standby. Every defensive system aboard every ship was live. Below the waves, fast attack submarines moved to their assigned positions without any surface signature. Their torpedo tubes were flooded. Their own Tomahawk launch systems were verified and ready. Operating in complete silence, invisible to Iranian sensors, they were a threat that could not be seen or tracked, but was very much present and very much lethal. Back on the carrier flight deck, the first aircraft were being positioned on the catapults. Deck crews attached the launch bar of each F/A-18 to the catapult shuttle embedded in the deck. Jet blast deflectors rose up from the deck surface behind each aircraft. Pilots climbed the boarding ladders and settled into their cockpits. Plane captains helped them strap in, connected their oxygen and communication lines, then descended the ladder and pulled it clear. Cockpit checks began. Instruments verified. Radar systems tested. Weapon systems confirmed active and communicating with the ordnance on the pylons. Flight controls checked through their full range of motion. When each pilot was satisfied, they gave the thumbs up to the deck crew below. The arming pins were pulled from every weapon on the aircraft. The red flags disappeared one by one as technicians moved along the fuselage, removing each pin. Every weapon on that aircraft was now live. Engines spooled to full military power. The noise across the flight deck became enormous. A physical force felt in the chest even through hearing protection. The catapult officer crouched low beside the aircraft, made a final visual sweep, looked up at the pilot, received the signal, swept his hand forward in a low arc, and touched the deck. The catapult fired. The aircraft accelerated from 0 to flight speed in under 3 seconds and launched off the bow in a blur of gray airframe and afterburner flame, climbing hard into the sky above the Arabian Sea. The next aircraft was already being positioned before the first one finished its climb, launch after launch. The strike group was now at maximum sustained operational tempo, putting aircraft into the sky as fast as the deck crews and catapult systems could cycle. Aircraft returning from patrol caught the arresting wire, jerked to a stop, were taxied clear, immediately surrounded by fuel trucks and weapons teams, turned around, rearmed, refueled, and brought back to the catapult. The aircraft never stopped flying for long. For the thousands of sailors and pilots operating across every ship in this strike group, there was no defined timeline for how long this would continue, no scheduled end to the alert, no return date on any calendar. They had their orders. They had their positions. They had their weapons ready and their systems active. The carrier strike group was on station, fully armed, fully manned, and prepared to execute any mission that came down from command at any moment of the day or night. More assets were already inbound to the region. Additional strike groups repositioning. land-based aircraft moving to forward operating bases. The buildup was not slowing down, it was accelerating. And out there on that flight deck, under a sky that could turn hostile without warning, the deck crews were already bringing the next aircraft to the catapult. The next launch was seconds away.